Hi everyone, my name is Monica Taylor, and today we're going to be creating my signature design called my passport card. Now the passport card is a fun little card that has 3 pages. And what I love about this design is you can use any type of designer paper to change up the design. You can add pockets to use as gift card holders, you can add little inserts, you can use it to even add ephemera for a crafty friend. So that's what we're going to create today, and I hope that you love this design as much as I do. So the paper that we're going to be using today is from my digital kit called Rusty Rails, and this is a vintage railroad theme kit. It has lots of wonderful papers and pieces of ephemera that give you that nostalgia of riding a train. Now this design, as I indicated, has a pocket at the back of the page, which is wonderful for gift card holders. So you can use this as a gift card for any occasion. So within the kit that I'm using, I've sized down my paper to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so that way I can get the most of my designer paper. All these papers come in sizes of 8 1/2 by 11, but I went ahead and I sized them down in my Photoshop to make it easy. And then you're going to need 1 piece of craft cardstock, and you're going to cut it at 5 1/2 by 7 inches. And this is going to give you the base of your card. Now, once you have your card cut down to 5 1/2 by 7 inches, then you're going to also take the leftover piece that you have, and you're going to cut that down to 4 inches by 4 1/4, and that'll be your second page. Now, once you have your paper trimmed, then we're going to need to do some scoring. So you're going to want to grab your scoreboard. And I use a little Score Pal scoreboard because it fits perfectly on my desk. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the piece that you cut down to 7 inches by 5 1/2, and you're going to score that lengthwise on the 7-inch line. So you're going to want to line it up on your scoreboard so the long part is at the top. And then you're going to go over to the 2 3/4 line, and you're going to score it. And then you're going to go ahead and fold that piece inward, and then you're going to turn it upside down, and you're going to score it again at 2 inches right to the first score line. And this is going to be where you're going to cut. Then you're going to take your second piece, which is 4 by 4 1/4, and you want to line it up so it's at 4 inches. And then you're going to score that piece at 1/4 of an inch. So once you have all your scoring done, then you're going to go ahead and take that first piece that you scored, which is your 7 inch by 5 1/2, and you're going to trim it. And you're going to trim it where you scored that top part at 2 inches, because this is going to create the opening for your first layer. Now this is an easy cut. All you're going to do is follow your score line, and you're going to cut it exactly to the edge of the score, as I'm doing here. And then you're going to just kind of rotate your cardstock, and you're going to trim it again. Now once you have your paper trimmed, then you're going to want to get out a corner rounder. Now this is not required for the design, but I just find that it makes the card look more finished. And you're going to round the corners on all of the edges. So you're going to take your 7-inch card, and you're going to round it at all 3 sides except for the bottom left. And you're going to do that for the second piece as well. You're going to have 2 sides, which is your top and your bottom, not rounding the top and the bottom left. And then for the small piece, you're going to, of course, round the corners at the top and the bottom right. That way you have a flat edge where your card opens. And then you're going to take your 4 1/4 by 4-inch card, and you're going to add glue where you've scored the piece that I'm showing you here. And you're going to flip it over, and you're going to add it to the inside of the card base, and this will create the 3 layers for your card. All right, now we're going to go ahead and trim up our paper. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, this design can use any type of designer paper, just depending on what type of theme you want to make. Now, for me, I'm making a vintage railroad theme card. So I'm using my kit called Rusty Rails. And within the kit, I've already sized down my paper, so that way when I print out 2 sheets, I'll get 4 different designer papers. Now, because when you print it out, I get a white border, my final images are going to measure about 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I find that's a good starting point. But if you're starting out with some regular cardstock, I would just trim it down to A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that will give you a good place to start. So once you have all your paper cut out, then it's time to figure out exactly what pieces are going to go where. Now you can certainly use the same design on all the pages, but I find if you find coordinating cardstock, it just makes the design so much cuter. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some of this designer paper to the back of my card. I knew that I was going to use this ledger sheet, so I went ahead and I started there because that was an easy decision. And as I add my paper along the way, before I add my adhesive, I want to make sure that I do trim up my corners of my paper to match the base of the card. Now, when you're picking the paper to go on your passport card, you want to be somewhat strategic. As you can see on these papers, they have some wonderful labels on the top, and I want to make sure that I take advantage of the layering of this design. I want the top of the cardstock that has some wonderful labels to be able to show through the design. So for instance, on the back piece that I'm adding here, this says Chicago, Rock Island and Pacific Railroad Company. I knew this was the perfect page to go on the back layer because it's going to show perfectly when the card is closed. Now for this back page, I want to add a pocket. So I find if you add the pocket before you actually adhere this piece down, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So the pocket is 2 inches deep, and you just want to make sure that it's the same size of your cardstock from left to right. So just trim down some of that craft cardstock that you're going to have left over, and then you can add it to the cardstock here, and then make sure that you do round the corner on the right side. Now remember, you're only adding glue to the bottom, left, and right because this is a pocket. And then if you have any excess on the right side of your sheet after you add your pocket, you can just trim that down using some scissors. So once you have your pocket in place, you're going to want to go ahead and choose some designer paper. And again, you can use some of the scraps that have been left over from some of the pieces that you've cut, or you can use one of the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sheets that you have ready to go. Just make sure you don't pick one that is going to be great for a back page paneling because you want to keep those to show those off in your design. Now when you're putting this together, I find, like I said in the beginning, if you have 2 pieces of 8 1/2 by 11 cut in half both ways, you're going to have enough paper to create your card. This will give you enough to add papers to the front and the back of your card, along with any pockets or any tucks you might want to add along the way. So don't feel like you have to bring out tons of paper. Just pick the 2 pieces of 8 1/2 by 11 that's going to work for the design, and you can keep this pretty tidy. I know sometimes when we're creating, we tend to bring out all sorts of items to decorate our cards, but with this design, 2 sheets is going to be enough to create your card. And as a bonus, if you are using the kits, this paper all coordinates perfectly together, so you don't have to rummage through paper to find out what's going to match and what's going to work. You're going to know every piece of paper that you choose is going to coordinate fantastic for this type of a card. All right, so once you have your pocket in place, then it's time to go ahead and choose some of the other designer paper. Now, once you go through your pieces and you figure out what piece is going to work for which page, then you're going to have to trim it down. Now, you can certainly pull out a ruler and measure your pages left to right, top to bottom, and figure out exactly how much you need to cut. But I find if I just figure out what piece I want to use and I just put it up against the page and use a pen or pencil to measure it out, then this gives me pretty close to what I need. A lot of times when I trim this paper, it's going to be exactly the length and width of my page, but I know sometimes we like to leave a little bit showing to have that craft cardstock show on our design. So if you need to trim it just a bit more, you can certainly do that as well. Now there's a lot of ways that you can approach the trimming of your paper. You can simply go page by page, or you can kind of figure that out as you go along. If you're going to have to be using a trimmer rather than scissors, then I would recommend figuring out your page design up front so you don't have to keep pulling that trimmer out and putting it back after every trim like I'm doing here. I just wanted to be able to show you that as you trim your paper, you are going to have to do some measurements along the way. Now, once you trim your paper, remember, sometimes you're going to have some white showing. So if you have any of the distress inks, vintage photo or walnut stain works great. Now, if you don't have any of the distress inks, you can certainly just use any type of brown ink and use that on the edge of your paper to get rid of some of that white. Now remember, as you trim your paper, you're going to want to continue to round the corners according to your base. So on this particular one here, I needed to round my corners on the top and the top right, and the bottom right to be able to match the rounding corners on the base of my card. And then I can simply add my adhesive to my page. Now on this front page, as you can see in the initial design, I used one of those large portrait paper dolls from Tim Holtz. And this is another way that you could go. Since I already showed you how to do it with the paper doll, I wanted to show you that you don't necessarily have to use a paper doll on this design. You can just use some really coordinating nice designer paper. The paper doll, of course, is a really nice bonus because you're going to get the layers of not only the front image, but the back image when the card is closed. But I want you to know that you don't have to run out and buy this product. You can certainly use what's in the kit as I'm doing now. So once I had that front page figured out, I went ahead and I started measuring out the rest of my pages. And I decided to go ahead and measure out all of my pages all at once like I was indicating, so I don't have to keep bringing that trimmer out back and forth. So just take a minute, figure out what pages you're going to use for each sheet, and then measure them out so that way you have all the paper ready to go and glue down. You're going to find if you get all the pieces cut out ahead of time, as I did here, the design of the book is going to go together pretty quickly because all you're going to be doing is rounding your corners, adding adhesive, and then going on to the next page. And it goes together pretty quickly. Now keep in mind, if you're going to add any type of embellishment, so for instance, if you're going to add a tab on any of the pages or maybe some other pockets, you want to kind of think about that before you put your pages down. For this particular design, the only additional item that I added was the pocket on the back, and we took care of that at the beginning of the video. But you can alter this card so many different ways. You can add tabs at the edge of each page to help it flip the pages easy. You can add little inserts. You can add paper clips. There's lots that you can do to add additional embellishments to this card. So all I'm saying is if you are going to go ahead and alter it a little bit more than we're doing today, kind of keep that in mind when you're going to add your pages. And then once you have all of your pages adhered, then what I would recommend is get again, that brown ink or the distress ink if you have it, vintage photo or walnut stain, and just simply add some of that distress ink around the edges of your card. Remember, this is a vintage inspired card, so you want to make it look old, and just adding the extra distress ink really adds some nice final touches. All right, so for the most part, your card is pretty much complete. Now we want to go ahead and start working on that insert at the back page. I'm using some extra cardstock that I happen to have on my desk, but you want to make sure that this is somewhat sturdy cardstock because remember, this is going to be an insert and you're going to be pulling it out from the pocket, so you want to make sure that it's nice and sturdy. Additionally, if you're going to use this as the note to be able to write a little note to someone, make sure that you kind of take that into consideration for the designer paper that you're going to put on the back. If you want to be able to write a little note to the recipient, you want to make sure you pick some designer paper that's not too busy. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut down this cardstock, and you're going to cut it down to 3.5 inches by 4 inches. And then you're going to go ahead and just adhere it to your cardstock. Again, keep it in mind how you're going to use this cardstock. Now, if you're going to use the insert as just design, then you don't necessarily have to worry about what designer paper you're going to put on the back. But as I indicated, if this is where you're going to be adding a little note to someone, then make sure you pick some cardstock that does have some space to be able to do that. And then when you're adding your paper doll portrait, you want to kind of measure exactly how deep it's going to be in the pocket, so that way you can make sure that the face of the little character you're adding is going to show really nicely when the card is closed. For the most part, if you go down about, I don't know, about an inch or an inch and a half, that pretty much will give you enough room. But I would certainly test it out before you add the glue, because once you add your adhesive, you're pretty much committed. And then before you add your portrait paper doll, take one final moment to round your corners. Again, I just think that the rounded corners really finish off the card, and it just makes for a nice finished look. Okay, so just a couple of final tips here as we finish up this card. As you can see, I'm using adhesive glue that is liquid, and it's a 3-in-1 beacon. And I like using this for the passport card because it gives me movement time. As you saw on several of the pages, and even on the portrait card, I had to move it a little bit just to line it up exactly where I wanted it, and having that liquid adhesive gives me that time to do it. Additionally, we didn't add any extra ephemera on this card, but if you are using the Rusty Rails kit, there's some wonderful ephemera that you can cut out to add to the pockets or even to the pages. And if you're not using the kit, dig into your own stash and see what type of vintage style ephemera that you might have that would go perfect on this card. Again, this is a layered card, so the more embellishments you can add, in my opinion, the better it looks. Some of the pages already have added embellishments. As you can see here on the page on the left, it has that little faux paper clip along with a ticket. But wouldn't it be fun to actually add a piece of ephemera with a true little paper clip? I do that on all of my passport cards, and they just look fantastic once they're finished. To me, it's all in the details, so don't forget about adding the little details to finish off your card. And as you are finishing off your card, remember, it doesn't have to be just one type of paper. You can create these type of cards using very cutesy paper, little animal paper. You can create birthday cards using this, anniversary cards, Valentine's Day cards, any holiday for the most part. This is a very versatile design, and it looks fantastic with all different themes. So as I finish up here, I am going to offer you some photos at the end of the tutorial just to give you some examples of how the finished card looks open and standing up. It's a perfect card to sit on somebody's desk or somebody's counter, and it will be displayed and cherished for many years to come. I guarantee you, this is a keepsake card, and many people love these cards and they hang on to them forever. So if this looks like something that you might want to create, be sure to check out the shop, Taylormadecards4u.com, because I have lots of wonderful theme kits that work perfect for this design. I also have this particular paper, which is the Rusty Rails kit, available in the shop. So be sure to check that out if you want to make this exact card. This has been a favorite design of mine for many years, and I hope now that I've introduced it to you, it becomes a favorite of yours. So as we finish off here, I'm going to share, like I said, a few photos for you just to give you some more inspiration on the design passport card Rusty Rails. I hope everybody has a wonderful crafty day.